We've got 7:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for everybody who's here. See a few new faces, so thanks for coming out with us. We'll call the meeting to order. I think we'll kind of dispense with introductions. I think anybody that's coming to the microphone will introduce themselves. Hopefully you know the members of our committee who have worked very hard this year. Takes us to item 2, approval of the excuse me, the minutes from the last meeting. So the committee had a chance to take a look at those.
We're all good with those? Yeah, I'll make a motion.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any other comments on the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, you see item 3, business, and I'm going to change the order. We've got a couple of our county commissioners here that I talked to both of them and to Eric Landwehr about kind of keeping this idea in front of this committee. I mean, we need a lot of input. I think last time we talked about Councilman Kimna's annexation committee if we're going to move forward with it, but we just thought that they could bring us up to date on where we stand. I think we talked about maybe after the first of the year, getting the annexation committee together, so. Yeah. So that committee really has not met by design, but there was a couple of new items that Mr. Landwehr had. He unfortunately is out of town at a meeting, so Commissioner Otto and Commissioner Helsher are here, and I don't know, are both you speaking, one of you speaking? You're both welcome to come to the microphone. And again, we did not anticipate anything official. It's just kind of an update to let you know that this project is percolating along, and there's been a couple new developments, and I think Mr. Landwehr has some preliminary numbers for us. So,
he does.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Harry Otto, Western District Commissioner of Cole County, 713 Hobbs Road, too, by the way. I'm going to speak about the west side of this project. We're talking about Wildwood Drive. More than a dozen years ago, I think, the county acquired the right-of-way, purchased, in most cases maybe purchased the right-of-way, and did a preliminary, more than a preliminary plan, a plan to take that road all the way to where Frog Hollow Road meets Rock Ridge. And so that's the project we're talking about here. So we're past the preliminary planning stage. We actually, those plans were put into software, and they were put into software so long ago that software no longer exists. So it's being reprogrammed or re-entered into a current software program, design program. And we want to move ahead with that. I wish Public Works Director Eric Landwehr could be here, but he's in Kansas City at a Public Works kind of meeting. He plans, there's been some paper circulated where he put some numbers with this and what the cost would be now and perhaps the cost next year to get more engineering done. I think Eric's plan was to go ahead and have the county front those costs. You know, we can always settle up later on these cooperative projects. There are owners there who sold land a dozen years ago asking when's it going to happen. There are new owners that have property adjacent to it, have plans to put residential territory in there. So this is something, and part of it, of course, it belongs to the city in terms of it's in the city limits. And perhaps there's annexation issues that could pop up, or opportunities, I should say, going forward. So I'm not the engineer on it, so I can't, I should be the accountant on it, I guess, but I haven't paid that close attention to what's going to happen. Although Eric has filled us in with what it ultimately would cost and how that would be shared as a co-op project.
And the county already has the right-of-way for the road, correct?
That's correct. It was acquired a dozen years ago, I think.
And then just to add on to that, it's part of a master plan as Mission Drive is extended someday to kind of make that loop at some point.
Right. You know, I think this was originally put there as kind of a transportation corridor way back in the day, and it's one of the few things that was there on that map a dozen years ago that hasn't been fulfilled. But ultimately, now with Mission Drive didn't exist when this was put in, and maybe Mission Drive pushed this back. But Mission Drive extended to the west. There is a penciled-in roundabout where it would meet somewhere between Rock Ridge and and Edgewood. And we've talked. There's a plan to include a greenway with this, so parks would be involved. That Rock Ridge is a favorite bicycling path for folks who visit the community, and that could tie into the greenway down below.
Good. Are there questions or comments? Or Mr. Marash, did you have any questions or any comments, or you want to wait till both have presented? I mean, again, this is just kind of an update. But.
Well, I could mention that if we want to spend some money on that, typically we would true these up with an agreement, and we have also hanging out there that we haven't finished an agreement on either, the rail spur. Right. So that way we can just do them both at once and then move that on if that's what y'all want to do. Yeah, this topic and that topic.
And perhaps the Eastern District Commissioner would like to step up and tell a little bit about the eastern side of the projects.
Great, thanks.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Helsher, Cole County Eastern District Commissioner. The Militia Drive extension, there's a little history in there from 2006. It was looked at as being a possible sales tax project. The Militia Drive interchange on Highway 50 is a possible location for a future Highway 179 connection to the east or a connection to Route M. That's been talked about for a while. It's a big project. This would be taking off maybe a bite at a time and starting this project. Recent conversations with the city and county leaders and property owners in the area have really brought this to the forefront. So one other thing, in 2017, MoDOT had constructed a safety project to remove parts of the at-grade intersection right across from the Highway Patrol. And now you have to drive all the way down and make a big U-turn off of Shamrock Road. So traffic heading into town has to make a U-turn at the Militia interchange. We're looking at a preliminary design possibly for 2023. Construction, maybe 24, and it may even go into the next half-cent sales tax cycle, depending on how all the other projects work out. We've got some other things kind of on the line. The master plan has the extension on it, and it allows the developers that are out there to start making their plans too. We've got a couple of them that have approached us and just said, where are you going to take this road? We just need some kind of an idea. So getting a plan together would be the first step. It's a little bit behind the Wildwood project, but it would kind of follow that same plan. So if you have any questions.
And just to reiterate a point that Mr. Otto made, I mean, it can be two separate issues, doing the road projects and doing annexation, but some of us felt like this is a good opportunity if we're going to do it, but they're not dependent on each other. And obviously it would be voluntary annexation. We're not looking to go after, but as long as we're doing it, it could be an incentive for some. So I just want to make sure that, I mean, he raised a very good point, and I didn't try to catch my council member off guard because we did indicate that the annexation committee wouldn't start meeting until next year. But
yeah, the proposed extension would go, part of it goes through incorporated Jefferson City area.
Correct.
And the other part would be unincorporated area, and then you'd have the opportunity to ask them if they wanted to voluntarily annex.
And that's the same on both sides. Some on the west side goes through a little bit of city property, then goes into county.
Correct.
But again, that's a potentially valuable quadrant if we can get all the pieces put together. Questions of Commissioner Helsher? Councilman Spencer.
Again, just thank both of y'all for coming this morning and giving us a more of a financial update than anything. I think the plan is still consistent of what we have been discussing for several months, and appreciate Eric's diligence in getting all these numbers prepared. And I've stated numerous times, it's just really nice to have the county and city partnership and working together and really looking at it a long-term goal and objective. So again, thank you both for being here this morning.
Thanks for having us.
And you indicated 2023 is if we were to
Preliminary
formally
design.
bring this up at our January meeting, because again, I mean, I'm not asking the committee to do anything today, but if the county's gonna spend $100,000, there's a commitment from us that half of it's gonna come, so we probably need some direction, but I don't think we're ready as a committee unless there's some reason we need to push this quicker.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure there's not any objections to it, or if there's any obstacles we need to get around before we put that money into it. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Appreciate your support on it, so. And if you do have questions, just let us know. Harry and I are always available.
okay, one
Alrighty.
last chance. Any questions for the commissioners? Again, thanks for being here, and
Thank you.
tell Mr. Landwehr thank you. I know he spent a lot of time on that presentation last time and has been a huge advocate, so we appreciate all the work he's done.
Thank
Thanks.
you, guys. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Okay, we will go back to the agenda, business item 3.1, parking garage discussion. I'd kind of mentioned briefly at the council meeting on Monday that we would like to potentially move forward with the Jefferson Street piece of that project, but I think Mr. Smith also is going to just bring us up to speed. As everybody on this committee is aware, the council did send that entire project back to us, which I think is appropriate, and we will certainly begin the discussions on the bigger piece of the project, but we've got an opportunity to take care of our Jefferson Street deck, and that will be part of our discussions today, so.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to try to give you a broad update. I made myself some notes of several items I want to cover. Be happy to answer any questions. First off, as Councilman Fitzwater mentioned, the Jefferson Street deck. The staff is, as stated in the memo, staff is requesting the committee's concurrence with moving forward with negotiation for a scope and fee for a change order with our consultant to make some improvements and repairs to the Jefferson Street parking deck. In general, the scope and fee would include assistance with specifications for our precast panel repair, the waterproof membrane and drainage system for the upper deck, guard cable repair for the lower level, and miscellaneous corrosion and concrete repairs to the stair towers. We also would like to add in looking at that pre-stressed cable repair in the Madison Street garage so we could begin go back to using level 4C. We expect the anticipated design fee to be less than $50,000. So if we have concurrence here, you would see a item show on the consent agenda once we have the negotiated that scope and fee. With that portion of this, I'd be happy to answer any questions before I continue with the rest.
Any questions on that project, Councilman Spencer?
Just a question on that Jefferson Street, the facade pieces there. Is that something that we would have to reinstall, or could we just go ahead and just completely remove those to maybe potentially cut some cost on that project?
Potentially, we could. The issue is the panels serve as the guard rail for the upper deck. So the upper pieces could not, well, they couldn't be removed and just not put back. So we would have to investigate the cost feasibility of putting something back versus reinstalling those. In not knowing fully exactly how they're installed, it's difficult to say if we can remove the lower ones and leave the upper ones. So I guess the short answer, that was a long answer to say, I'm not sure. But we would certainly be talking about that with our consultant.
So that'll be part of your discussions.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? There is a request for expenditure to go on the next council consent agenda. Does someone feel comfortable
I'll make a
moving that
motion
forward?
that we move that forward to the full council.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Councilman. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
I have three other items here just for a quick update for the committee. The parking app update, first off, that app for payment of on-street parking is in development with our contractor. And really the holdup right now is just delivery of the new signing and stickers that will need to be placed on, excuse me, on the meters themselves. The app development is relatively simple. They have multiple customers. It's just a matter of putting our zones in, but that is all tied in with the signage in the different zones. So we're waiting on those signs to come in. We're hopeful that we're going to get those in the next few weeks, but I would, outwardly, I've been saying a couple of months, we should be able to roll that out, is where we're at. Public comment period on the Madison Street garage I'm sorry.
Could I ask you
Sure.
a question on that project? Have you seen any positive impact from the changes we made just in the meter rates? I try to eyeball it, but it's just anecdotal, but it seems like it's freed up some parking on the street, and it could not, maybe there's not a correlation, but there seems to be more usage of the State Garage since we made those changes. Do you have any feel if that's having
Again,
an
it's all
impact?
anecdotal myself. I haven't done any actual investigation looking at revenue and usage, et cetera. But certainly on the Jefferson Street block, the 100 block of Jefferson, I've noticed a marked decrease in the number of parking because that was literally full from about 7:30 in the morning every day, all day long. That area has opened up, and I know that the primary user of that were state employees, and so I'm assuming that they have chosen to go back to the free parking that is available to them in the State Street Garage, although I can't prove that. So that does, the result of that is there's parking available for people that want to be close to the Capitol and are willing to pay the higher rate.
And that was our goal as legislature comes back next month, that we try to be good corporate citizens, and so hopefully it is working, but I appreciate you working on that.
Right. But Capitol Avenue seems to be, again, anecdotally, I'm seeing, there's always spaces available, but it is still a relatively full area whenever I go through there. I'd say relatively being 50 to 70%, which means that there are people using the parking. So it hasn't run everybody off, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I think people have figured out that it's one fare west of Madison, a different fare east of Madison. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a little bit busier in front of our building, but it's still not to the point where you can't find a spot.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
We also have opened the public comment period in reference to the Madison Street garage in the question of repair versus replacement of that facility. We issued a press release on November 22nd. I gave a copy to each of you at your desk when you got here this morning. In that is a link to our website, which allows folks to view the reports themselves and read them. And then there's also a link to a email address that ultimately comes to me, where they can provide comment. We've received a handful of comments so far. It has been pushed out on Facebook, as well as the newspaper has done some articles on it as well. We're going to see what we can do to continue to receive that input. I've met with the Downtown Association Board, explained to them a little bit more in detail about the process, and they're going to be passing on this information on to the members of the Downtown Association so that they can have a chance to read the report and also respond. Unfortunately, they don't have a membership meeting this month, so I won't be able to talk with them in person, but most of them know me, and the information will go out, and they'll be able to, if they have questions, contact me, or they'll be able to provide us comment through the same portal. And then the last item that I have on the agenda is staff is working to answer some of the questions that came up through the work session. In putting them in broad terms, there's a lot of other questions that go along with this, but figuring out what is the plan for construction, whether we do a renovation or a reconstruction. What is the plan for handling parking? And we're working on those plans and hope to have something that we'd be able to present at the same time we bring back the public comment on that. And then we're also looking at least a preliminary look at the affordability of what it's going to take rate-wise to do whatever plan whatever plan option we have, at least in a preliminary standpoint. With that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
I think Councilman Kim had
And I
a
know with some
question.
of the public comment, and I'm sure you saw it too, we received some feedback as far as possibly attaching solar panels to the parking structure. I know we're early in the phase and feasibility. I don't know if we can or if there's any kind of incentive in doing that, but I just want to make sure that that's still in the discussion as a possibility looking forward.
It's certainly, if we go to new construction, that would certainly be a major consideration. And also with the push for electric cars, we'd have to look at electric charging stations as well. But, those are a lot of questions that are answered down the road as we, that's assuming we head in the new construction direction.
Councilman Spencer?
And as you look at the affordability of the project, whether new or refurbishing, is there a way we could kind of get an idea of if we opened up the high street parking for metered parking, or at least some nominal fee increase, how much that would play into that? I think that would kind of help us with that number as well. So just kind of curious of what we'd be looking at for doing a.
Certainly didn't have that on my radar, but I can certainly put it on there.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Is January a realistic target? Are we looking at February?
Certainly we'll have some information for you in January. I'd love to be able to say we got the app rolled out in January. I'm not sure with the Christmas holiday that I'm going to get the developer that push them that hard, but we'll certainly have an update for you in January.
Well, I was,
We'll have the
Not
public
for-
comment, obviously, we'll have the public comment that I can bring back. And I think we'll have at least a first look at some of our affordability studies as well.
so I think message to the committee is we got a lot of work to do in 2023, so be ready in January. Thank you. Anything else on parking?
Chairman Fitzwater, could you clarify? I just
Morning,
wanted to
Mayor.
understand and have a clarification. Councilman Spencer, when you said meters on High Street, were you talking about putting meters on High Street where there's no meters? What was the question for Britt?
Just to get a figure of what revenue we're potentially losing for having free parking on High Street, and of how we could maybe capture some of cost recovery from
Oh,
that.
okay. That was an interesting comment. I thought, did I understand that right? No, probably not, but I guess I did, so.
Do you understand
okay.
it now?
I do now, yeah. And you can also add in we can have a broader discussion certainly and bring in the Downtown Association. I'm sure they would certainly want to have a discussion and say in that, but just wanted to make sure I
Absolutely.
understood that you said your thought was about putting meters back on High Street. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else on parking? All right, High Street Viaduct. I think Mr. Bangy has some information for us.
Yes, thank you. So we have been working with Bartlett & West, who was the consultant selected for the design of the High Street Viaduct. And so they have returned to us a proposed scope and fee for that design, or actually it's the conceptual design of that project. And so included in your packet is sort of the outline of what that will be and the cost associated with that. So essentially what we're looking at is beginning to assemble kind of a base map of the existing conditions, coming up with a number of different potential concepts for the bridge. Some of those things include the style of bridge, and then also kind of what are the termination points of that bridge. Is there something that could potentially be different with the eastern end, or considerations of that nature? What impacts could it have to the creek, and et cetera. And so then once we have sort of vetted those concepts, the idea would be that we would further explore 3 of those concepts and eventually arrive at a preferred alternative. And so once we have done that, then certainly there could be additional work done with the hydraulics, with the creek, work with the Corps of Engineers. Certainly we'll be working with the railroad and other stakeholders in the area, certainly the state of Missouri, St. Peter's, et cetera, in terms of impacts that this potential concept would have with them. Ultimately, there is a line item in there for Bartlett & West to help us with the the potential writing of grant proposals, since the project is at this point underfunded. And so that is kind of a separate line item within that proposal. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Do you need any action from us today?
Ultimately, if everyone believes it to be reasonable, we'll put that together with a design contract and bring it to the council, the next council meeting or the one following.
Very comfortable with that? Yes. Good, thanks.
And-
Do you have the, Mr. Marash?
And I just point out, this is a city-county project, so, my comment previously, so we have the rail spur, we'll have this, we may have some other things. Do you want to wait for the annexation meeting to occur to put those other costs in for those other two roads into a broader agreement? It helps us with accounting, and we get 3 or 4 years down the road, who spent what and all that kind of thing, before we get too far out. So looks like we'd probably front this money, they fronted other money, and it helps us just keep track of everybody, so we don't all forget.
I feel comfortable, yeah, if we proceed with this, with the understanding that at some
We'll
point we're
follow
gonna have
that
a
up.
true up, and I think,
Wait
I
for the
think they-
annexation meeting then or something.
I don't know that we need to wait for that on this unless.
No, I mean, there's
For the
always a
true-up?
separate agreement with the county. It's just a city-county agreement showing who spent what on what.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
ahead.
take the advice from you when you think we
Okay,
need to do it.
so when we can
but-
get that together, we'll bring that as well.
Yeah, we just don't want that discussion
No, we
to
don't want to hold
delay.
this up,
to
yeah.
delay
No,
this.
that's not
Sure.
my point, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I misunderstood what you.
Yeah, well,
yeah, at some
it
point
could
we'll
be
need
that
to-
I might be able to get it together with this contract. It's usually pretty straightforward. It's just kind of an accounting, hey, we're doing this with this money, that kind of thing. So it might be we show up with 2 agreements, one for them and one for this.
Okay, that's good.
That's emergency.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bangy. I did see Mr. Gilbert last night, and he indicated that they were working diligently on this project, so, yeah, I appreciate all the,
Consultant Todd is here with a consultant. If
There he
anybody
is.
has any particular questions, he's here as well.
all right. Let's move to item 3, cost for bus service on Black Friday. Mr. Stegman? Okay,
Sorry. Jerry put a memo together on this. Jerry's our interim director. The question was raised by a couple of the council here about the cost for this service, and put a memo in the packet. But bottom line is, it's $7,500 to $9,500. It'd be an overtime exercise, and that doesn't include, other costs. But if something were to break down or something like that. But anyway, and we're lucky to have an employee that's very long-term down there and from the 90s, in fact. And he was indicating that they tried this once and they just really didn't have much ridership, and just some of the reasons why that the staff put together that are more familiar with it listed there. But we wouldn't recommend doing it based on that. Plus the staffing right now, and we're usually down quite a few anyway, but the staffing thing can be quite a challenge with transit. We have a lot of people working those extended hours and not being able to take vacations when we're down bus drivers. And that's, as of late, last few years, been quite a common occurrence that, we're delaying people, can't take a vacation if you need one, things like that. And so, my fear is to exacerbate that issue. You get a 4-day holiday, so people think, well, I can finally at least go spend some time with my family or whatever they want to do. And it might, just the morale on that is pretty low when you want to take a vacation and we can't allow it because we can't run the buses. So anyway, Jerry's here to answer particular questions about transit. He knows a lot more about it than I do. He's right behind me. There you go. Do you have any?
well, I appreciate you putting it together. I mean, I think it was a legitimate question. I mean, I think you've done a great job of bringing it back. I know there's been discussion in the community. Should we be looking at transit as a business project or a social response or commitment from the city? So, I mean, I think it was legitimate asking it. I appreciate the input. I mean, we've tried it both ways, and the recommendation came back was that we not do it, but you know, some of us weren't on council back when we did do it, and it apparently was not well utilized by the city, and that's fine. I mean, that's what we're here for. So I appreciate you digging that out and putting it together, and for having a frank conversation about it. Any other comments or questions? Councilman Spencer?
Yeah, you know, you had mentioned that with you being short-staffed and that personnel are having difficulty to take vacations and those kinds of things. Maybe that's something that we need to think creatively of how we can take care of those, you know, maybe through, I don't know, I think that's a benefit that is if certain employees aren't able to utilize versus general employees that can pick and choose whenever they want to take off. Obviously public safety's part of that, but you know, so is the transit system too. So I would encourage staff to maybe think creatively of how we can offset some of that, and you know, whether it's a slight compensation upgrade or something, but I think our transit drivers do an excellent job, and I witnessed it the other day, that they kind of go above and beyond with giving some customer service, which I really value, not only as a taxpayer, but as a fellow city, former city employee. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman?
Yeah, I'd just
Lester?
reiterate, I appreciate you putting this together. It helps us understand why this wouldn't be a good idea to do. It seemed like it would be a good idea. So I appreciate the facts that you put down here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. All right, seeing no other discussion, we have a discussion on Missouri River flood study. Mr. Smith, I believe, and Mayor attended an event, I guess a week or so ago, to kind of kick off this latest phase of the project. So, Mr. Smith?
Yes, we appreciate the time, and this should be a pretty short report because we don't know a lot of things yet. The very good news is the state of Missouri and the Corps of Engineers entered into a cost-share agreement to conduct a study of the river specifically here at Jefferson City and what actions could be taken. You know, at this point, it's basically everything is on the table. What we do know is that you know, our levee across the river protects us to a flood level of about 30. I say about. I mean, we've held a little bit higher than that. And we also know that when it does overtop, the same places that it blew out in 93 and is the same place that blew out in 19, et cetera, et cetera. So the study, as we understand it, will be looking at both resiliency, in other words, withstanding the flood, versus shortening recovery as well. So we're anxious to work with the Corps and the state. I think there are some really great partners really wanting to do some changes that are for the better. But everyone needs to be ready to give and take because no one's going to get exactly what they want. There's a lot of people that believe, well, L142 needs to be done, which is the quote-unquote super levee that was envisioned many years ago. Other folks say we need to do something on the south side of the river. And you know, maybe that's true as well. But the answer that we can all live with is someplace probably in the middle. So with that, happy to answer any questions. But as I said, it's just beginning, and we are one stakeholder of many in that process.
Well, I miss seeing Mr. Reisick here. He's usually with us, but he chairs our Airport Advisory Committee, and Mr. Smith did brief the Airport Advisory Committee on Monday at the meeting. I see we have representation. I don't know if you had any comments on this project, but obviously we're very proud of our airport. It's a very important piece of our infrastructure here. And as we continue to remind people, the 6th busiest airport in the state of Missouri, obviously the home for state government and also for the National Guard. So it's a very important asset for the city, and this discussion is important to to the airport.
And actually, you know, north of the river has got a lot of important things. You know, the airport, yes, certainly something very close to my own heart. $25 million economic impact in the region every year because we have that airport. But we also have major employers over there as well, be it Hitachi or our sand plants, our asphalt plant, MFA, and then, of course, all the entities that are at our airport. So it's certainly a very vital part of our city and the economic engine of our region.
So anyway, there was a signing agreement, I guess a week or so ago. I indicated the mayor was there. I think the governor was there, and individuals from around the state government and federal government kicking off this latest phase. So appreciate your work on it. Mr. Morash?
I'd like to just give one plug to our city staff on this as well, that we, so to get this going, they hired a university professor and some of his staff to do a study up and down the river and talk to all the various communities. So we were meeting with them, and the follow-up was, and I think it might be mentioned in this news release, is that Jefferson City has one of the best, one of the best models for a flood preparedness study. And the staff put it together many years ago. You know, I helped start it, and it's been growing. Every time we have a flood, we update it, and fire, and everybody's included, police, and so we all kind of know, and parks is in there, and so we all know what at various elevation floods, and they are very impressed with our study. So I think that helped them say, okay, we have a good handle, and that's to a good staff. We work with GIS and putting that together years ago and continue to do so. But Britt and David and Don and a lot of people are involved in updating this and implementing it too. Once it happens, when we have a flood, we kind of are able to quickly, if we're not here or we get run over by a bus, you know, the next guy will pick that up, or gal, and say, hey, here's what happens, you know, at this flood stage. And so that was the goal, because we'd have new people cycle through way back 20 years ago, and they get all excited about something. We say, well, at this stage, here's exactly what happens. And so that was really impressive. I think it helped us get to be part of. There's only 4 locations up, three
I
locations
believe.
now. I guess the 4th one's done.
Mm-hmm.
3 locations were picked up and down the Missouri River, and we got to be one of them. So just want to
Well, I appreciate you raising that.
Our professional staff did a great job keeping that up to date.
Well, we're constantly impressed with the broad range of topics that you guys stay on top of for us, so thank you very much. There was one other point that was discussed at that discussion at the airport you might want to just briefly talk about, because there's always discussion on this side of the river when we think about making changes on the other side of the river. And my understanding is, I mean, obviously that's an important piece of the discussion, but everything that's being discussed will have minimal impact on this side of the river.
Right, and that's sometimes hard for people to understand, that if we, you know, build a levee on the south side, does that push water into the, you know, or excuse me, on the north side, does that push water into the city? The reality is the way it has to work, the way that things are modeled is, you know, they have to minimize the impact that the levee has to the river elevation. You know, it used to be a 1 foot or less rise was the standard. But now I think it's a much tighter standard, and Don Fontana, our stormwater engineer, probably knows this better than I, but it's called an insignificant impact, or words to that effect. So whatever we come up with, it'll be modeled such that it's not helping someone to hurt somebody else. That's not the goal. The goal is to help everyone. But if we were to raise the levees on the south side, or excuse me, on the north side, that is not a statement that says we're just going to push more water into the south side. That is not the case.
And I'd add that this study that I was talking about does show impacts on river level, and the Missouri River Bridge is really the funnel, if you will, that governs a lot of that, and so the water is actually pushed back from us. So you know, that's why we made this study 20 years, you know, this impact thing that I was talking about 20 years ago, because people would get excited about what's going to happen. And we could tell you when they say river level prediction is this, we know the ice arena is vulnerable at this stage. And we're talking about river flooding now too, though, not necessarily flash flooding. There's a difference. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that's an important piece of it. This is obviously a long-term project, I think 3 years, but 3 years will zip by, and we'll
Yeah, I
see
think
where
it's
it
3
goes.
years of a study.
Of the study, yes.
Which is lightning speed for the Corps.
Absolutely. Thanks for all your work on it. One last shot. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much. All right, let's talk about yard waste and compost site. Mr. Grellner, there he is. Welcome.
Dave Grellner, Environmental Health Manager. I want to take a few minutes to talk about a yard waste and compost site contract. As you all probably know, our current contract will expire on October 31st, 2023. That's the final year of our 5-year contract. The cost currently is $201,600 for this final year. We do this with All Seasons Landscaping, and is located at 2417 Southridge Drive. We are in the process. The staff is trying to develop a new proposal. We're looking at the next 5 years for that. Some of the highlights of the proposal would be kind of continuous with what we have already is no charge to city residential users. And of course, there would be a cost proposal for charging anybody non-city residents or commercial businesses. We would throw an option of curbside on-demand pickup. We currently have that. It's basically the system that the customer would request a curbside pickup on request to the contractor who may receive this bid. And they would come out and pick it up for a fee. And of course, did we throw in the no charges to City Jefferson departments, see if we can haul our waste there free and processed from whether it be Public Works, Park and Recreation, et cetera. Parks has expressed more interest in some of the larger material they've received, some larger stumps and things like that. They may want to add that to our current proposal that may come up on the next round here. Our purchasing department did release a request, information request to vendors this past summer. They received one response back, and basically that was to find out best management practice of yard waste for the city of Jefferson's and what can be done to help facilitate that. Like I said, we received one response to that request. It's included in your packet there. So I guess our final is, we're kind of requesting, does the committee want us to pursue another 5-year contract? And if any input to that proposal.
All right, comments, Councilman Spencer.
Yes, I think there's a couple issues I'd like to see detailed out. I don't think that this program should be totally funded by Public Works. I think Parks should contribute. It's an advantage to them as well. I've had some very brief preliminary discussions with some county commissioners as well about possibly sharing some responsibilities in that as well. Maybe giving some satellite sites around the county so that the county residents could drop off waste, and then the contractor go out there and pick those up. So I don't know how, departments can interact to have some more intense discussions about that.
Sure.
But,
yeah, I see what you're saying there. One thing that's in it, it's very important too, is that those sites, they really need to be manned to keep out the contamination. The goal is to get, basically a pure material of yard waste. If you have trash or anything that's dumped in there, it really hinders the process, and you have a lot of issues with that. So, so that would be one thing to think about when we do sites, manned versus unmanned sites.
Okay, and then maybe to even simplify it, maybe just offering the services to county residents to piggyback off the contract as well. So I definitely understand that.
Sure.
I don't know how much the county would want to participate in, but I think they were willing to have some initial discussion to see how
Sure.
how this could be formulated. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any, Councilman Lester?
I understand Parks currently has a separate contract to take care of their large wooded product or material.
Right.
Do you know how much that contract, what they pay for that?
I don't know the park's particulars on what they pay for that currently, no.
Okay. I mean, it would seem like it makes sense to put it all in one, and
Right,
they would help with that.
I think that's what their intention was, maybe to put it all into one service for disposal of yard waste.
Any other comments or questions? I appreciate all your work on it.
Okay.
Obviously, the community spoke out as we were finishing up our budget package last year,
Absolutely,
which is the way this system ought to work, so we appreciated their input, and I think we have
I think it's an important service and,
absolutely, and
Yeah.
they,
So we wanted-
they expressed that, and that's why the system works, and we appreciate them, and we will try to give you as much feedback as we can as
Okay.
you go through this process, so that we can secure this service for long term for our citizens. So
Okay.
thanks a
All
lot.
right, thank you.
All right, we've already completed item 6. That takes us to item, actually 4. We've completed item 3.6. Takes us to item 4, citizen input. I know one gentleman indicated he wanted to talk about parking garages, and he had emailed us. I believe you should have received an email from him. I sent him a quick thank you last night, and I appreciate you showing up. Just introduce yourself and
Absolutely, yes. Thank you
Comment.
for giving me the opportunity to speak and to comment to you guys. Also want to talk about a couple other things besides parking, but that's my main thing right now. I've been a longtime resident of Jefferson City. My parents and I have paid taxes here virtually my entire life. A lot of money's gone into the city, and what I ask is you guys be responsible and very thrifty in spending that money. I have a recommendation on how we could do this. The parking garage could be a way to at least break even on utility costs if we were to install solar panels on the unit itself. I know Oak Hills has done this already. What I'm reading in the paper, it's a 10-year payback, which gives them about 15 years of free electricity from a 25-year panel. So it makes really good financial sense to me to do that. Encourage you to seriously think about doing that for the parking structure as well. What makes it even sweeter right now is that the new law that's passed, the Inflation Reduction Law, provides a way for cities and other non-taxable entities to be able to recover money, a 30% tax credit for doing that. It's going to extend for several more years, so we could apply for that, potentially get a rebate of that money, which basically is a discount of 30%. You could pay for your parking gate, an enclosure for the attendant, heating and cooling, lighting, all can be paid for by free electricity from the sun. Seems like a really great opportunity for us to save some money and spend our taxpayer money wisely. So I guess, would anybody have questions they could respond to, like me to respond to on that?
well, you heard Councilman Kimna, challenged us as we go through this discussion to keep that topic, and I know Councilman Lester has been a proponent of solar and has talked to us, so I appreciate you bringing it forward. I do think that will be part of the discussion. Mr. Smith indicated that was one of the items, so thank you for sending the information to us and, raising that issue. You said you had
Yeah,
another
and I can share
issue
that with
too?
the rest of the committee too. I didn't really have the address of everybody else, but I can do that as well.
I think it went to.
Did everybody on the committee get
the
that?
general mailing list, so
Okay,
everybody
okay.
should have got it, but
Super,
if
yeah,
not, we'll.
Yeah, great. Yeah, a couple more things quickly. I don't want to take a lot of your time. I hadn't planned to talk about flooding, but that's also near and dear to my heart. My parents both grew up on Missouri River bottom farms. My mother's family still farms a century farm along the Missouri River in Osage County. And the floods are devastating. And I realize it's a big problem for cities and everybody else, but the water's got to go somewhere. And I'd like to make a suggestion that we consider. I think it's maybe Audrain County, has moved their levees back. So you give it a place that can meander and spread out without damaging crops, without damaging city structure. We ought to seriously consider doing that in our levee plans here as well. I'd like to recommend we do that. Just give it a place to spread out naturally.
Well, just to follow up Mr. Smith's discussion, as you probably heard, there's a 3-year study going on.
Right.
They have, Mr. Jay Fisher, who has big farms on that side of the river, has been active in those discussions, and Mr. Baumgartner, who has property over there. So, I think that is something that's being taken into discussions, and obviously other farms along that area that we know that it impacts, and obviously the Corps knows. So, I think that's a valid point that is being considered as they go through these studies over the next 3 years.
Super. Just a quick shout out for the composting. I know my sister and brother-in-law use it. They made 25 trips there this year themselves, so a great service to the community, and appreciate that. And a quick question, is there a way to recycle glass now? I see the bins I used to see are no longer there for recycling glass. Is there a way I can do that? I know this isn't the proper forum, but if you guys know.
Anybody? Ms. Senzi.
Yes, you can take your glass. We're repairing some of the bins, so it's probably why it disappeared. There's one by Federal Recycling off of West Main. There's one in the former Save-A-Lot parking lot over by IC.
Okay, yeah, I used to use that. It was still there.
Right, and there's also one off of High Park Road. So if you cut off Missouri Boulevard, kind of go like you're going towards the animal shelter, there's a bin there too.
Super. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your comments. All right. That takes us to item 5, reports, Ms. Senzi, and at the record show we got you on before 8:30, which is pretty impressive.
We'll see what I can do with that.
All right. Floor's yours.
Okay, so what we've accomplished in the past month, the EDA grant for MSP infrastructure is somewhat stalling. We are still trying to complete the programmatic agreement. And that's the reason why it's taking so long is because you have the federal government, the state, county, city. So it's coming up with terms of what the overall plan is with that site. It's kind of like getting a crystal ball out and figuring out what that site's going to look like once everything is completed, and that is challenging. One of the other things that we've talked about is putting together a mitigation committee that allows us to execute that programmatic agreement and then look at mitigation step by step throughout the process. We're not sure if that's gonna fly, but it's one of the concepts that I wanted to share. We will be having a meeting with our federal partners, the state agencies, basically every stakeholder that's contributing to the site, just to get everybody on the same page of what exactly the goal is of a programmatic agreement and what mitigation looks like. So that's where that is right now. We still continue to meet with the state on a monthly basis and meet with our developers on a weekly basis. So we will continue to plug away at that project.
And just to compliment city staff, there was a meeting that I had an opportunity to participate in yesterday. We had a number of our staff there, including Ms. Senzi, and some discussions about how quickly things are moving in communication. I thought it was a very appropriate discussion. It was all very well received, but it was discussion that needed to be had, and I thought you did a great job, so thank you very much in representing the city of Jefferson.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The EDA CARES Act Economic Recovery Plan, this is the funding that we are working with the Mid-Missouri Regional Planning Commission, also Jefferson City Regional Economic Partnership, about a broadband plan. I've got to follow back up and see exactly where that plan is. It's supposed to be completed by the end of this month. But I also wanted to highlight that the FCC just dropped new maps. And it shows Cole County is 100% built out, which means, we can kind of click on that baby. Yeah, Jessica, can you help me out? Sorry, thought I could click on the link. I do like these maps. On the positive, I do like these maps are a little bit more interactive and detailed. I'm going to let go of the mouse. Okay. If you go to just Google the FCC maps, what you can do is you can pull it up by county, but you can also search your address. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be kind of a process for challenges because the FCC realizes that what their data is kind of blanket data. So they realize that they're missing these gaps. So they're really putting it on states and, oh, there we go. Thank you very much. So you could see the maps. You can actually put your address in here. And then you could see what the fixed broadband as well as the mobile broadband. Your uploads, your download and upload speeds, the kind of the bar is 100 megabytes per second for download speed and 25 megabytes per second for upload speed. So they're concerned with the quality of the product that we're getting as well. But if you zoom out and look at how Cole County is, it really comes up to that it's 100% built out. And what that means is that the community cannot really access some of those federal funds. And also that broadband companies right now, if they're pursuing federal funds, they're going to go to the low-hanging fruit because that's what the FCC maps are telling them. So one of the things that we're working with the Regional Planning Commission and with the State of Missouri Department of Economic Development Office of Broadband is to see if we need to utilize our plan to do a bulk challenge. Individuals also have the opportunity to look up their address and they can do individual challenges as well. It's estimated that if an individual challenges and is successful in that challenge, it's $5,000 of federal funding that gets unlocked for the area. So that's something that we really want to make sure that we promote that opportunity. There is a larger meeting on December 16th. It's a webinar. If anybody's interested, I could send that information out as well. You can also find it on DED's website if you look for their Office of Broadband Development. And it's going to explain in detail how the challenges work and what the benefits are from challenging that process.
So are providers challenging this? Because, I mean, it would be in the interest, I would think, of providers because, yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get better internet for quite a while.
What do you mean you're not 100% built out? No, it's I think it's a little bit of everyone. You know, the University of Missouri Extension Program is working on this as well. And one of the questions that they asked at a meeting that staff attended last month, I believe, maybe the month before that, it was really everyone. They talked about we need to contact schools because we just went through this pandemic and everybody had to do learning at home. So that's a great opportunity to get that feedback of did it work. Also, you know, and also there were a lot of the utility representation in that room because they're looking at where right now it's kind of ad hoc where they go and they're using their data. But, you know, there's an opportunity for them as well. So I suspect that they would do that. And that's all the information I have on that right now, but we'll keep working on that. Just see an opportunity there to be able to be built out. Our entitlement community development block grant funds, our Adams Hickory Street sidewalk project has started and is plugging away. We are also, we received 3 bids for our analysis of impediments on fair housing choice plan. That is a requirement through HUD that we have that updated every 5 years. We have received 3 bids. We're going to score them, but we should have that contract in front of council probably that first meeting in January. It is 100% federally funded through our admin money, through our CDBG program. We are also updating our citizen participation plan just to make it clear on how citizens can participate in the process of deciding where those funds go. That will also be at the next Public Works and Planning meeting, and then we'll be at the probably a January council meeting for adoption by resolution. And, you know, one of the reasons why we're working so hard on cleaning up some of these documents is because we're getting ready to open up our 5-year consolidated plan. That is, I know we do a lot of plans and public engagements with these meetings, but this is the one. This is the consolidated plan dictates where the next 5 years of CDBG funding goes. So if the public or council or your constituents are interested in making sure that that money gets pushed in a direction, these are the meetings to participate in. We'll start having a survey that goes out. The goal is to have it out by the end of the month. So you'll see that, and it's really identifying where those unmet needs are and where that funding should go. CDBG disaster recovery. This is the $7.3 million that we're working with the State Department of Economic Development through. We have not heard from MHDC. We did have a kickoff meeting with Department of Economic Development earlier this week for the overall disaster recovery funding, just about how to operate it and how it works. And what they mentioned that MHDC will likely announce the low-income housing tax credit projects in January, in early January. They traditionally get announced in December, but that's kind of any day now is kind of what we're taking that as. Once they announce those projects, we'll kind of know what budget we have left to work with, and we can start unlocking some of those other programs that we're building out with the state.
And we had 4 projects presented, is that?
We had, so we had 4 total low-income housing tax credits applications, 3 of which also pursued disaster
Right.
recovery funding. Yep. Historic Preservation Fund, we are working with recipients of the Paul Bruin Revitalization Grant. We went out to Cole County Historical Society earlier this week to look at their windows and their tuck pointing. Basically, they're getting their design packets together. And we are, I told each property owner that we're going to run them through the ringer up front because when they go through the design review process with the National Park Service, they get very particular about, window replacement versus restoration. So we're trying to make sure that we are upfront with what those expectations are. All the applicants are currently working on getting professional design and getting their project scopes really ironed out. We are also conducting environmental reviews. Those are currently with the National Park Service. And each applicant will enter into a 5 to 10 year conservation easement, basically stating that they're going to preserve their building for a minimum of the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years. So we continue to work on that. And it's actually good timing. We think we should have everything somewhat ready for spring construction season. And those funds have to be done completed by September 30th of 24.
So Rachel, I recently heard that why we don't have more loft apartments downtown is because the water system's not sufficient enough for sprinklers that would be required. Is that true? And if it's true, can some of this money be used to update so we can rent apartments downtown?
Yeah, I don't know about the water system downtown and how that it'd have to defer to Public Works or building.
It's wrong, but that's.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that. I don't know if that.
It's an
if that's
urban
true.
myth. I've talked to the water company about it in the past. It's been several years now, but that was always, a reason why that people didn't like it. Now Matt Kreiling's here. He might be able to more recent discussion about it, but that's
Did you have
my
a comment?
Yeah,
recollection.
I just was going to say the same thing Matt did. There's issues with where the buildings are and the physical cost of bringing new lines, but it's not a supply issue.
And for this funding, it's really about, I'm not going to say it's not for interior, but you'd have to have something significant architecturally inside your property to spend the funds on the interior. Most of this is for exterior and kind of buttoning up the buildings and making sure that they're secure. So most of the projects that we have include window restoration replacement, lots of tuck pointing, roofs, just the minimum of keeping your building secured in the majority of these projects. Pending applications, we did receive a Historic Preservation Fund grant for design guidelines, which will hopefully be a document that makes historic preservation a little bit more transparent and clear to the public. new construction in historic areas, additions, just making it a little bit more of a usable tool. Grant acceptance will be at the December 19th council meeting. I didn't highlight it. We did submit the Community Revitalization Grant Program. We had originally intended to apply for $3.75 million with the idea of completing the demolitions that we needed to complete at MSP. And we were also hoping to throw funding into the rehab of historic structures. Unfortunately, the state was not able to give me $2 million worth of projects on the timeline. So we ended up submitting for a $2.1 million request when we're leveraging the EDA grant and our other matching partners with that as the match for this grant. So we're just trying to stretch those dollars as far as we can. The website, DED website said we know about these in January. I think that's a little bit of a lofty goal. We do know that there was $100 million available and they received $250 million of requests. So we'll see how they'll have to weed through those applications. And it's, pretty competitive. We're currently working on our local tourism asset development grant. That would provide $2.5 million for the hotel gap financing at MSP. That grant is due December 14th, and the purpose of that grant is any tourism or hospitality industry that was negatively impacted by COVID-19. And we really feel like our entire MSP redevelopment project was negatively impacted by COVID-19. So being able to provide funding there would be helpful. Yep.
So that's only going to be potentially dispersed into the MSP project? No
The
other-
local tourism asset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So none of the other local hotels can get access to those? Being that it's negatively impacted by COVID?
It's not negatively impacted broadly. The exact goal is to provide funding for hospitality projects that were delayed or canceled because of the impacts of COVID-19. It's essentially taking those projects that hit a wall because of COVID-19, trying to start bringing them forward. So existing hospitality concerns wouldn't be eligible.
Okay. And the Community Revitalization Grant Program, it says MSP demo and rehab of historic structures. I assume that if some of those historic structures on Capitol Avenue cannot be rehabbed, can that help cover the cost of demoing those as well?
So for this, when we pick the projects, I really cherry pick. Like, there's an opening.
Okay.
What do you want to fund? Oh, we've got something that matches. So for this one, I don't think we could have done the Capitol Avenue. But one, because of the timeline, and two, the demolitions would have had to been voluntary, and that's not what Capitol Avenue is at this moment. And then also going back to the local tourism with the hotels, because it was tourism, hospitality, and you have MSP as the tourism component, and you have the hotel as the hospitality component, it makes it a more competitive ask. Knowing that other hospitality industries in the city, everybody felt it. And I don't know that I might be speaking, but I don't believe we could have subgranted this one out. We couldn't have accepted the funds and then provided the funds to the hotels. I don't think. You have to have beneficiaries listed.
Is that something we could check on just to make sure that or are you fairly confident that that's not?
Well, we'd have to. It's due on Wednesday, next Wednesday. So it would have had to been. It would have been had to have been a mass effort to allow everybody to have a fair opportunity to come in and participate. It would have been a completely different program design.
Okay.
And
And just a little follow-up there, for potentially anticipating cost for the possibility of demoing properties on Capitol Avenue. We have some funds from the ARPA funds of like $180,000 that we put back. Do we have other funding streams that I can't recall off the top of my head?
Right, so the city council did an appropriation back in March, April, something like that, that should, I believe it was $575,000. That should cover all costs of demolition. I'm gonna knock on wood a little bit here, but those bids have been coming under projections. So I think we have what we need to cover those demolition costs, and maybe a little bit of excess. So
To not include the 180, because that was really kind of more of the.
it does not include the 180.
Okay, great, because that was kind of envisioned of having a continual revolving fund, if you will, for the abatement processes and for future. So-
Right, yeah, that's the way I understood it. I think, I don't speak for Sonny or anyone else, is that the kind of two separate projects, kind of the great one fell swoop for Capitol Avenue, and then trying to come up with a more sustaining project with the other funding. So
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
And I think the demolitions and rehab you were talking about potentially in that grant were the historic properties at MSP. Is that?
It would be the Saddle Tree Factory. That's the property that's closest to the river. Housing Unit 5, which is that red brick building, the big one that's also closer to the river. The corridor that connects, kind of that main admin building connects to Housing Unit 5. We'd take that out. We also included demolition of the wall. If the wall is not ready, we could also shift that. That's why we wanted to open up that rehab possibility. So if the wall is not, we're not ready for the wall, we could shift it over to rehab, or we're not quite clear what components of the wall. We also applied, because if we take the wall, then we've taken away our security of the site. So we also put in kind of a nicer steel, the kind that looks like wrought iron fencing, that would secure the historic site from our side of it, as well as sealing up the corridor, and adding an entrance, because once you demo part of it, we'd be leaving a hole. So it's really just a little bite. The demos themselves, our numbers are from earlier this year, December of last year. They're about a year old. So it came out to about 1.6 million for asbestos abatement and demolition of those structures that I had mentioned. And that could change as well. But we really just wanted to keep the flexibility, and every penny of match that we had available, we kind of tried to build up our ask for it. So
And
that's
part of the problem that's been discussed is our CVB is having to spend their funds to secure some of the properties at MSP. Councilman Schreiber can speak better to that, being more active with CVB, but the concern was it's state property. They have to be working with us. So I think Ms. Senzi was trying to do everything she could to help them find dollars to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think, to defend, I think the staff that we're working with are somewhat stuck. So kind of the meeting last night, the Office of Administration is the property owners of the buildings. There's also been conversation about DNR taking it as a state historic site. DNR can't take it as a state historic site without funding to be able to support it, because they don't have it, so they can't make the commitment. They can't ask for funding from the legislature, because that would mean that they're committing to taking the site. So they're in this vicious, the government spiral. OA also did not request funding in this year's budget. So if there's no ask, there's not, unless the governor just decides to put it in the budget, it's not there. So at the earliest, the state could not spend a dime on MSP until July 1 of 2024. So I think the staff is stuck. I think staff recommendation from my perspective is if the state is going to put funding into MSP, as in like the historic site that the community has kind of stated that they wanted, there's going to have to be conversations with the governor's office, the House, the Senate. Otherwise, it's not going to be in this year's budget at all. And that's kind of the takeaway from, is that in a nutshell from?
Yes, it's a lot of good people trying to do good things. As you indicated, it's just trying to figure out how to get out of that loop. And yeah, I think Mr. Mellon was there and suggested some ideas, and certainly Ms. Senzi. I think everybody wants to move it. It's just figuring out how we get it moved. But in the meantime, our CVB is having to spend valuable dollars that they need for other things, so we'll see where it goes. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Did you have anything left on your report? I just wanted to highlight that part because it's a very important piece of what we're doing as a committee long term.
Nope, I'm ready for questions if you have any more. Thank you.
Any questions or comments that we didn't go through as she went through the report? Again, a very detailed job. Thank you. All right, that takes us to the end of the official agenda. I was just going to update. As you know, we had made a comment. To preface it, I had the opportunity at the invitation of Mr. Barron and some city staff and the mayor to attend a MoDOT regional meeting last night where they were just kind of talking about their unfunded needs and how things are progressing forward. So Mr. Sanders was there and Ms. Williams and Mr. Barron and I had the privilege of attending. It wasn't part of the official discussion, but I had a conversation with Mr. Barron in regard to that project north of the bridge, you know, the 3-laning project. We had indicated our displeasure with the elimination of the Route W ramp coming back into the city. My understanding is there's not been any formal action one way or the other, so right now it's still basically on track as it was proposed. Again, that wasn't part of the discussion. My point was we are very well represented in the city and the region because a lot of it come out of Campo, which is more than just Jefferson City, but I think our city is very well positioned as the state, assuming funding stays there and nothing changes, on moving our projects up tier 2, tier 1 of the unfunded needs and looking at things. Long term, just to keep the committee kind of focused, one of the things that we have talked about, our staff and Campo has talked about on that project list that needs to get on that project list at some point is the Rex-Witten Expressway, which is going to require some, kind of like the viaduct, some study work up front. So Mr. Gilbert was there, and I talked to him just a little bit. Certainly the Chamber of Commerce's Transportation Committee has prioritized that project. So we're not looking months out. I mean, that's one, I don't know what, 5, 10, 20 year in the future process, but it's like the viaduct. It's going to take study to show how we move it up that list. So I mean, my comment is we're very well represented there. They do a great job of working with other communities, and then once you decide what you're going to do central, then you've got to position your projects with other projects all across the state. So I think we're very well represented, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in all the work that's being done. I don't know if there's any questions or any comments from anybody that attended, but it was a good meeting. They kind of went through their process, which the professionals there understood. For me, it's always nice to have that refresher, but it was a great presentation. Number of MoDOT staff, which is good connections, and again, I think they're looking out for our long-term needs, but you know, when we talk long-term, we're talking months, maybe a year. When they talk long-term, they're talking sometimes decades. So you got to position yourself in the process, and I think we're very well positioned. Anything else to come before the committee? Man, Mayor, what? Councilman? While she's walking up?
Okay, yes, it'll be brief. So I went on a police ride-along last night, and one of the things that the police, we went by the Truman Hotel, and one of the things that was mentioned that, you know, it's an eyesore, but he mentioned that they continually have problems with people breaking in, even though it's currently well sealed. It's a problem with our police, for our police, and just generally, I think, I don't know what we can do, but it certainly, I think it is a problem for the city. And continues to be, and hopefully we could find some way to do something about it.
Thank you. Mayor. Mayor. Yeah, I think others are raised. I'm looking around. I don't see a lot of.
I don't know if Mr. Sanders is in to answer that.
We have made efforts and have noticed up that property for items that we feel we do notice up all other property owners are. To the best of our knowledge, it has been secured. We did not know there were break-ins. We have addressed stagnant water issues and things like that and have had it cleaned up, had dangerous signs removed and whatnot. But at this point, we feel it is not out of line with other properties in similar situations throughout the city. And it would not be just to go above and beyond what we do as standard procedures with that property. Given that, there probably are other ways to address it, such as we have Capitol Avenue.
Thank you.
Yes, I did speak with the property owners and voiced the concern with the condition. Of course, unfortunately, it is compliant with codes, at least at this moment, but you'll be checking into that further as you normally do. But yes, I did meet, and they indicated they were working on potential redevelopments. So again, though, I think that is definitely a concern, and I share it, and that's why I took the time to meet with the property owner as well.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to take a moment, first of all, to thank you, Councilman, for being part of the meeting last night and giving us the update. That's extremely important for the city. So thank you for representing and being there. And also wanted to echo some of the MSP comments, Ms. Senzi and Mr. Molman and the entire staff that's worked very hard on that. And when you talk about all the coordinating entities that are part of it, it really shows just the good work that the city has done in facilitating this site, because it's the #1 tourist attraction in our city, and also the substantial investment that the state is working on with the One Health Lab coming and our hotel and conference center and all the other redevelopment pieces that are happening. But without our involvement, it's hard to believe how much we've done really in this amount of time helping to coordinate. So definitely appreciate staff being diligent on coordinating a complicated project, but will also be the one of the largest economic development and growth projects we've seen in our community. Lastly, I really wanted to come up here to also mention on Living Windows as part of the group that we had here on Friday night, that, and I mentioned it at the council meeting, but we had Katrina Williams and David Bangy spend their Friday evening at Living Windows engaging public comment, and we appreciate it because there are things you could have been doing that Friday night with your own family and friends. Instead, you focused on the city and gathering input, and we appreciate that because I know that study for active transportation is extremely important. The representatives of Campo and the consultants were here as well. And then whoever actually made the bike that people rode, the stationary bike that had the lights associated with it, you could see kids and families really light up when they got to see how that worked, and showed people that they can engage in the city and also have fun at the same time and give their input and learn. And we had a lot of positive comments, so I do appreciate staff doing that. Central maintenance built to that, so that's pretty cool. I hope you keep it and roll it back out every year. But I know it takes staff to do that. So I don't know if you... I didn't know that was your bike, Britt, but we all rode it that night, and it was a lot of fun. Right. And even the night before with the mayor's tree lighting, adding the active transportation group as part of a ride from here around the city over there. So you all took some extra steps to engage, but of course, as always, staff went above and beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, I did see Mr. Bangy on Thursday night at the tree lighting, all decked out in his bike and a helmet, so he was practicing safety and doing his job, so thank you. All right, I guess Councilman Deacon, you're about the only one in the room that hasn't spoken. You have anything to say? All right, I think we're ready for a motion for adjournment if we have no other items.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. We're adjourned. Thanks.